There you go.
It's happening.
It's going to be an Aussie accent all the way.
All
I
the
don't
bloody
care if you
way.
like it or not. I'm going to claim it's from Darwin, from the middle of the outback.
I'm from where... You don't know where I'm from, all right?
Yeah.
I could be from anywhere.
You've never been inland.
You don't know. Listeners, welcome back to Lost in Postulation. Once again, mixing it up there with the intro. I'm Neil Fitzpatrick, and I am joined once again by a man who is here to repay over 2 decades of bad Italian accent impersonations. He's a man on a mission, and he's here for revenge. It is Nicola Volpi.
It's great to be back, Neil. Thank you so much for having me today.
And luckily, I know better than to do an insensitive Italian accent here on this podcast, or in general. In fact, I feel I've made that mistake too many times.
I can barely do one myself, to be honest.
It's hard. It's hard.
It is difficult to do compared to other, because there's so much content of Italian accents out there, right?
And you can be very easily accused of going too much into it, of leaning into it too much, right?
Yeah.
It was huge actually in the Chris Pratt Super Mario, casting, where people were wondering, is he gonna do it? Is he gonna lean in? But he did not.
He didn't do it.
He did a basic a New York accent, I think.
Okay, like a New York American,
second generation,
a little
immigrant.
Brooklyn, throw it in like this.
Hey, it's Mario, I'm walking here.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. But
I always got the boppity boopity from Family Guy.
That was what a joke. I mean, that really stood the test of time. Yeah,
it did.
But it worked. I know it did because it's true in a way.
Whoa.
Hey, show respect.
You got angry at me last week for just mispronouncing Dublin. You got offended.
No, I thought I was giving you some praise for a decent Dublin, but I do. People throw that one at me a lot here, where they're like, "Hey Neil, what's it like in Dublin?" Like they really lean into it. I'm like, you just say Dublin. It's not like you don't have to go Dublin. We don't all do that. We don't. We don't walk around
while
saying,
swinging your arm in a jolly fashion.
Exactly. Yeah. Guarding our Lucky Charms, etc.
And your Guinness, your pint of Guinness.
That's the number one most common one actually that gets thrown. Yeah, it's disrespectful. In any case, we are back to postulate once again. And before we get into our big meaty topic for today, which is of course the pop culture tier list, we're going to do our usual, which is to check in on a quick mundane. And before we do that, we're going to check in on the socials and how you can find us online. First and foremost, most excitingly, our new Instagram page. That is that is Lost in Postulation on Instagram. You can easily find us there, growing rapidly at a rate of knots. You can also find us on the Twitter for now. As I keep saying, it is at In Postulation. That is not anything else like Lost in Postulation. It is at In Postulation on Twitter. And you can also email us as ever. It's lostinpostulation@gmail.com.
We love those emails.
We sure do. We got a lot of them. We emptied the listener mailbag a bit last time, but I'm sure it's piling up again already.
We'll be back. And we had our intern who manages our social media accounts throw in a few red herrings onto the Instagram this week and actually kind of tricked some of our listeners in preparation of this very episode. But we'll get into that a bit once we do the pop culture country tier list of this country.
We absolutely will. Yeah, no spoilers yet, although I'm sure they've read the episode title.
Right,
but
hopefully.
In any case, before we do that, let's do a random mundane. And as I thought of this one, as I postulated as to what we could postulate about, I worried that this one might even be too mundane even for us.
Oh wow.
Because we're going pretty much maximum mundanity here.
That's saying a lot.
But I think that's what the people want. So, my question to you this time, Nicola, is when you're on the escalator, are you a walker or are you a stander?
Am I going up or am I going down?
Dealer's choice. Does it vary?
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think going up, I'm a stander. Going down... Wow, this is so mundane, I actually have to think about it.
It's maximum mundane.
Going down, I can be a walker, but I think a lot of it is determined of when am I on this escalator, what's the flow of people. Context. On public transport, I might be more of a walker because there's a general buzz and rush, but in a shopping center, I'm more of a stander maybe. So
let's say open escalator in front of you, no people, and no time limit, right? What's your move?
No time limit?
Yeah, as in you don't have anywhere you need to be, you're not like running for something.
I'm chilling. I'm standing, yeah. Why not?
I'm a bit surprised.
Safety first.
Is it that unsafe?
No, that's not my actual rationale. I'm just,
Yeah, you're postulating.
Postulating.
Yeah, but I was surprised because my own policy that I've always had, and it's the same policy I have at stairs, is ASAP. Get out of this get past this situation ASAP, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't do it if, imagine like it's packed in front of me and there's like 2 abreast all the way down.
Get out of the way.
Yeah, I need to go. Come on. Like that's not gonna. I'm gonna show respect in that scenario. But of course, if there's an open escalator in front of me, up, down, you name it, even a flat one, even a travelator, well, you're supposed to walk on
that one. I always walk.
Yeah, and I don't like when people don't.
I hate
because you're offsetting the benefit of the travelator. You might as well just walk then.
I actually usually don't take it. The airport.
I'm on that too actually, because you never know who's going to be blocking you halfway down, and then you're going to lose time,
right?
Rather than gain it.
The travelator, So you're always moving on the escalator, no matter the direction it's going. I
think so, because think of the efficiency gains. Like if you run up an escalator, that's the maximum speed you could ever possibly have ascended. Higher than even if you took the stairs. This is higher, you know.
Yeah.
So I just love that pure sweet efficiency.
But efficiency gains, that's if you have some sort of time constraint or something. Yeah. If I'm in a shopping center with my wife, I'm just trying to buy as much time as possible because either I'm standing on the escalator or I'm waiting for her in the store, right?
So you're enjoying the sweet moments of escalator
bliss, exactly, and escalator freedom in that sense.
So I think you're cracking into an interesting point, which is there's always mitigating circumstances as to why you might want to stand still.
And that's why I say the shopping center specifically, whereas on public transport I'll be moving because I need momentum. I'm trying to get somewhere.
Yeah.
But the shopping center, hell on earth for me, Neil.
100%. I can well imagine.
Oh.
It just, I was reminded when I was thinking about this one of one time I was in good old Brussels airport, arriving back in the country as I often used to do. And I was standing on the escalator and it was packed, like really, really packed. And we were going down to the taxi rank part, the lowest part of the thing. And sure enough, somebody from behind is like, excuse me, pushing past everybody. But that escalator is like 20 steps maybe, you know?
Yeah.
So they did the whole thing like, sorry, give me a house. They've saved maybe 3 seconds.
Right.
And it's like, you're getting in a taxi. What's the actual rush here, you know? So me and some of the other travelers on that escalator had a little laugh about it afterwards. We were like, come on, this guy saved about 3 seconds, you know?
Especially with the Brussels traffic that he has to deal with afterwards.
Buddy,
right?
you've got bigger problems than escalators.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But okay.
There you go. It was a quick mundane postulation, but I just had to swing that one by you.
I'll follow up on that one, though, because I'm actually, I will observe my behavior tomorrow morning.
Exactly.
I'm going to the airport, so I got to get to the subway station. There's escalators there.
You'll have plenty.
I'm in the airport, so tomorrow's a big escalator day, and I'm going to follow the lead of my wife, see what she does, because now I'm biased, right? Because I'm thinking about it. She won't have heard this yet by then.
Exactly.
And we'll take it from there.
Fantastic.
Well, there you go. That's mundane.
On that point, let's take a quick break, as we often do, and prepare for the big postulation for this episode.
Listeners, welcome back. Back now with the pop culture country tier list.
Yes!
Yeah, well, thank you,
There's
audience.
Some enthusiasm back there.
Live studio audience. Something we haven't done, Neil, in about 2 months, a bit over 2 months.
Time has flown. Yeah.
So, pop culture country tier list, what are we doing here? Basically, we are looking at every country in the world and objectively scoring and ranking each one based on their pop culture exploits.
Absolutely. I like how we change between calling it objective or subjective based on purely what we're feeling at the time.
Yeah, and or how much we agree with each other or not.
Exactly.
So basically what we do, we've done 3 countries so far. We've done Sweden, Japan, and Mexico. You can go back into previous episodes between the months of April and May of 2023 to check those out. And we look at countries based on 6 categories, and we score each category up to 5 points. So the categories are music, film/TV, literature, cuisine, sport, and then we have a special wild card, which we'll get into with this country. At the moment, the current standings, Neil, are in first place, Japan, with a score of 22.5 out of a possible 30. Then Sweden and Mexico, tied for second, with a very respectable 19.5.
High scores all around.
High scores all around, very respectable scores. And today, Neil, we're going to take a journey to the land down under.
All right, mate.
Good day, Neil, from Australia here.
Good bloody day. Let's bloody get into it. I'm going to say bloody a lot, and we need to limit, of course.
And mate.
Yeah, and mate. We need to limit and apologise for the amazingly inaccurate accents we will both be throwing out. That is just what we enjoy we enjoy it too much.
It's kind of like in Talladega Nights. If you say with all due respect, you can say whatever you want afterwards.
All due respect, huh? Yeah. 100%.
Except he was now with all due respect.
One of those. Yeah.
Ricky, you can't just say whatever you want after you say with all due respect.
I need to watch Talladega Nights, it seems.
Will Ferrell.
There you go.
Not from Australia. Anyways, that's where we're going today. We're very excited about this one. We've been exchanging messages throughout the day on Australian cadence and accent. And we're going to rank their pop culture exploits. We've already gotten the listeners a bit involved on our socials in the lead up to this release.
Exactly.
At the same time, by the time this is released, we'll be about a week into the Women's World Cup hosted by Australia and New Zealand, their neighbours, the bloody Kiwis.
How about that?
Yeah. So it's prime time for Australia. Tourism perspective, it's been open again for, I guess at least a year, right? For people to go back and visit. And great place, very dear, I think, to both of our hearts.
Yeah, in different ways, because I've actually never been there.
Well, there you go. Would you say, regardless of that, excluding Ireland, your favorite English-speaking country in the world?
On balance, all things considered, I would probably say yes, I would.
Look at that.
And it's nothing to do with, it's great to be there because I haven't been there. It's purely because every Australian who I meet out in the wide world is great.
They're great vibes, great banter.
Exactly. Universal to a person,
Yeah.
So lots of love for Australia and lots of love for Australian pop culture, which we'll of course be getting into. So from a starting point, very positive, put it that way.
Absolutely. And we tricked some of our listeners. We had our aforementioned intern put a few red herrings. The flag of Australia, a lot of people get it confused with the flag of New Zealand.
Those little red stars.
Yeah,
they'll throw people off.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Some are scattered on the Australian flag, where I think they're in a formation on the New Zealand flag, like but in kind of a diamond.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at them both from an emoji-sized distance,
right.
Really the only giveaway is going to be the white versus the red up the stars,
right? Because that Union Jack, your favorite, in the corner up there, right?
Absolute totes fave.
Yeah. Wow.
But there you go. Well. Fool us. No, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where I'm going with that. Fool on you, listener. Shame on you for falling for our trickery. And welcome to the next in a series of pop culture tier lists.
Yes. So the nice thing now is we have 3 countries to reference against when we're giving our scores. For each category, after some postulations, Neil and I each give a score, and then the total score is actually the average of our 2.
Exactly. Let's get into it.
And now, to the tune of Advance Australia Fair, and brought to you by our sponsor, Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia, here is our intro to Australia. Australia, officially the Commonwealth of Australia, is a sovereign country comprising the mainland of the Australian continent, the island of Tasmania, and numerous smaller islands. Australia is the largest country by area in Oceania, and the world's 6th largest country. Australia is the oldest, flattest, and driest inhabited continent, with the least fertile soils. It is a mega-diverse country, and its size gives it a wide variety of landscapes and climates, with deserts in the center, tropical rainforests in the northeast, tropical savannas in the north, and mountain ranges in the southeast. Australia is a federal, parliamentary, constitutional monarchy comprising 6 states and 10 territories. Australia's population of nearly 27 million is highly urbanized and heavily concentrated on the eastern seaboard. Canberra is the nation's capital, while its most populous city and financial centre is Sydney. Welcome to Australia. Let's get into it. Neil, of the 6 categories, which one would you want to start with?
I think there is a lot of meat on the film and TV bone.
Right.
And I like to break the back of these things early on. So let's get into that.
Should we do it? Film and TV. First thing, Australian cinephiles, they lay claim to the story of the Kelly Gang being the first ever feature film. So I think that's a good place to start.
Massive.
They claim to have essentially released the first ever movie as we know it.
And of course, you have to make a distinction between inventing something and doing it for the first time, right?
Right.
And are we saying that if the story of the Kelly Gang was never made, there would be no such thing as film?
Perhaps, or Hollywood or anything.
Perhaps not. However, I do think it's admirable that this thing was a monster of its time. It was on analog reels. I had to look it up a bit, and it was like a 1-hour thing, which at the time was unheard of. And just the Kelly Gang in general is a massively interesting topic. So big shout out for that. I fell down an unfortunate Google rabbit hole as I was researching this into the Kelly gang, second generation Irish immigrant, and his exploits were quite something. So yeah, love that. Need to watch the many Kelly gang films. I think there's about 12 or so in total films about Ned Kelly and his band of merry men. But in any case, great that they got the ball rolling with the first ever feature film.
Absolutely. I would say a good start by the Australians there, because remember, listeners, we rate not just in terms of the success of pop culture, but also the significance
the uniqueness,
to it. The uniqueness, exactly.
Influentialness, all these things.
So that's a start. And then what we've done for a lot of other countries so far is we've gone into discussing directors. So the ones behind the camera making the films. From a 21st century perspective, there's no bigger Australian name in the director game than Baz Luhrmann. And now Baz Luhrmann, for me, this is funny because this is a bit like when we discuss some of the Mexican directors. He's one of those that all the cinephiles and film nerds will tell you, oh, Baz Luhrmann, oh yeah, great, and he does this, and it's different, and it's special. To be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan. I think a lot of his films that I've seen could have been done better by another director, keeping it more simple.
Ouch.
For example, I think Great Gatsby, if you had Marty on that, would have been a totally different film, maybe even better. The one I liked recently is Elvis.
Okay.
But even there, it's an interesting way to do a biopic, also with like his musical choices, where all of a sudden you're having like some rap songs from nowadays in a biopic about Elvis, which doesn't make too much sense. It's kind of taking you out of place, but he's all about the glitz. You're a fan.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised actually, because Baz Luhrmann for me occupies a very similar area as someone like Wes Anderson does, where it's like you're going in and you're not getting any old thing. You're going to know it's him directing, right? And the introduction that I got to Baz Luhrmann was Romeo and Juliet, his amazing adaptation and modernization of the original script of Romeo and Juliet. It's basically word for word, but he's modernized it. Their swords are in fact guns, and all the guns have the word like rapier on it, or like, it has brand names on it. Yeah. So amazing job, I think, by the full cast. Claire Danes, DiCaprio, amazing stuff. And that was my intro, where I was like, whoa, films can be like this. They can be super weird. At this point, I wouldn't have seen that many weird stuff.
Right. We saw it in school when doing Romeo and Juliet.
Exactly. And probably at the time didn't appreciate it as much as I now do as well, because I was still in that early Shakespeare stage of like, oh, this is weird. But I think I have massive respect for Baz Luhrmann because of that. And then I'm actually very inexperienced with the rest of his back catalogue. So some of those critiques you were leveling, things like Great Gatsby, Elvis, haven't seen.
No, I think with Great Gatsby, it's difficult because it is it is like the epitome of the great American novel, right? From its time, F. Scott Fitzgerald. I don't think his approach of how to go about that movie, I don't want to spoil it for you, but I don't think that was the best way to go about it. At times, his movies feel a bit too musically for me.
He has that.
And if I would say something mean, as a corollary to your point about Wes Anderson, is that he's the poor man's Wes Anderson.
That is harsh.
Will the Australians hate me for that?
They will, but this is why we're here. We're dropping, if nothing else, extremely controversial calls. But I think it's fair. It's fair.
Acclaimed director, despite not having won Oscars, he's been nominated for them. So acclaimed, definitely.
I would actually say his star is still rising somehow, because Elvis is probably the most commercially successful film he's done, I would imagine, or close to it.
I think Gatsby, because it was just in cinema longer. Australia was big at the time, and I think Moulin Rouge as well. I mean, he seems to not work often in terms of feature films, but when he does, they seem to be hits.
He is one of those.
I liked Elvis, but I think I liked Elvis a lot because our guy there, Austin Butler, I thought did quite a good impersonation of Elvis.
You gotta love the impersonations, yeah.
Yeah, as you do. So yeah, that's Baz Luhrmann. I think other honorable mentions here. We had George Miller, Mad Max,
and that's kind of where it ends, right? He did Fury Road and the original Mad Maxes, but that's kind of the beginning and end of the George Miller discussion, which is no small feat, right? These are great,
right?
Super huge unique, hit. And we like uniqueness, right? In these ratings,
absolutely.
I think Fury Road. He did do Fury Road, right? Just to be clear,
yeah, he did Fury Road.
Phenomenal. So like, even if it was just that in his whole directing wheelhouse, I'd be like, well, that's pretty amazing. So I'm a big fan again.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And then Chris Noonan, Babe. You remember Babe, the little piggy?
Funny enough, I was brought to Babe as a child and slept through most of it.
Okay.
And then because I was upset about having slept through it, so I was brought again and I slept again through Babe. And I took that as a sign, and I've never seen the movie Babe, actually.
Okay.
I slept through it too many times.
We had the VHS.
Ah, well, there you go.
So, but I don't remember it. So
nobody does. This is the thing.
Exactly.
It's very forgettable. Everyone remembers That'll Do Pig at the end, you know? But the whole rest of it, I don't know.
No. We might have to revisit that to be fair to Mr. Noonan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The only other director I wanted to drop in was Peter Weir for The Truman Show.
Yes.
Another weird example, a bit like Shawshank, where it's kind of a one and done.
One and done, yeah.
One hit wonder.
A theme here, actually.
Yeah, like lightning striking once and once only. Like The Truman Show is an absolute masterpiece. Another school introduction for many people. You know, they see it as part of their schooling.
A film school piece, I would say. Even,
also, but so rewatchable. And it's one of those, actually very like Shawshank, that if it's on at any point and you walk into the room, you will just sit down and watch it, I think. It's so good.
Peak Jim Carrey.
Unbelievably so. I mean, that and Eternal Sunshine were his two big hitters, I would say.
Right.
Yeah. But so for that alone, I would say, so for these big hits, when you pull those movies together, maybe not the names of the directors, but more so the likes of Romeo and Juliet, Great Gatsby, Moulin Rouge, Australia, Mad Max, Babe, The Truman Show. These are like pretty impactful movies on the world stage. You'd be hard pushed to find somebody who doesn't know of any of those.
No, that's true.
But let's crack on, right? Because we give a score on all of these things, combined,
right? Exactly.
Directors and actors,
exactly.
And maybe that brings us on to actors. We have what you've described here in our notes as the 1990s actor boom.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of these came out in the 90s. Some still going, but Paul Hogan, Crocodile Dundee, where there is a second. I think it's a second. Maybe it's even the third, called Crocodile Dundee in New York. Did you ever see Crocodile Dundee?
Never saw a single one.
Okay.
I'm sure I'd like it, but I thought Steve Irwin was a good substitute for never seeing Crocodile Dundee.
The Crocodile Hunter. Different styles.
Exactly, but still very much playing into the established
absolutely
brand there.
But Crocodile Dundee, Neil, is the highest ever grossing Australian production.
Yeah, and that is both interesting and also a little bit of a downer. Like that Australian cinema hasn't ever surpassed the heights of Crocodile Dundee.
All right. Then we have Nicole Kidman.
Huge.
Known to have been the ex-wife of your mentor and a friend from the Church of Scientology, Tom Cruise.
Indeed. We won't hold that against her, though. Everyone makes
exactly.
mistakes. Yeah.
Toni Collette, who I didn't know was Australian.
You get a lot of these as well, don't you?
Yeah.
Even Margot Robbie, you kind of think, wait, Australian? Really?
Right, exactly. But Toni Collette, because I've always seen her in films where she either has a British accent or an American.
Exactly.
She's been very active in series the last few years.
Incredible accentologist, actually. One of our patron saints of the podcast. Actually.
Absolutely. Yeah. Toni Collette. Eric Bana, who
also shocker, yeah.
Do you rate him as an actor?
Yeah, I mean, good stuff. I need to watch, he's in Munich, I think, right?
Munich. He's like the lead in Munich, yeah.
Need to watch a few more of his work. But he's a comedian by trade, right?
I think
that's how he started off. So, yeah, another example, actually.
Right,
of a comedian turned actor. But here we have some big names, right?
Yeah. You want to hit it?
We have people like Jeffrey Rush, Parts of the Caribbean master himself.
Legend of the game.
Heath Ledger, come on.
R.I.P.
Or even that alone is enough to boost this up a point or two. Hugh Jackman, come on.
The sex symbol of the last 20 years, you could say.
One of the top ones. Cate Blanchett from Tar this year. I mean, yeah.
Cate Blanchett, the Meryl Streep of her generation.
Absolutely. Cate Blanchett, yes, massive. And Russell Crowe, for one.
Russell Crowe. Interesting you should mention Russell Crowe, because when we asked our listeners who their favorite Australian actor/actress is, most of them selected Russell Crowe. Mm-hmm. I don't blame them, because he had, from Gladiator to A Beautiful Mind all the way down to State of Play, one of the best runs in cinema history. Absolutely. For a leading man, like 8-10 years. Neil, what if I told you, though, that Russell Crowe is a bloody Kiwi? He's from New Zealand.
It's unfortunate.
He doesn't... And this is where we need to make some rules, right? Because there's actually a lot of beef about this. Because Australia claims him as a national treasure. They do the bidding for him. He's in all the marketing. But they don't give him citizenship. Yeah. So he moved to Australia from New Zealand, I think when he was about 4, lived there about 10 years, moved back to New Zealand as a teenager, till he was 21, where then he came back to Australia to kickstart his cinema career.
Makes sense.
Does a lot in Australia, also owns a rugby league team, etc. But what he claims is he applied for Australian citizenship twice, and they denied it both times.
Wow.
Now, the Australian Immigration Services, or whatever we want to call them, came back and said he's never actually applied. So it's his word against theirs. I'm inclined to take his, considering how unprogressive the Australian immigration authorities have been this century. But it's kind of like, what do we do here? Because if we include him in the Australia conversation, we can include him in the New Zealand one. And the Kiwis will be more hurt by that.
It's because what are we really recognizing here? He grew up in Australia, right?
Right? Because
10 years,
when you... Yeah, but then you could say he came of age back in New Zealand because he was 14 to 21.
Oh, it's such a tricky one. It's even trickier in sports where they've benefited from, say, like the sporting infrastructure of a certain country. Right. I would say no matter what, we just can't let these kind of people influence the score too much. These kind of people.
Don't let them into our country.
Riff-raff, build a wall. No, I just mean they should be, extra credit, maybe, but they shouldn't be like part of the fundamental score. We had this a bit with Mexico as well, and I'm feeling like it's worth recognizing them. And of course, I would be absolutely out of line to hold it against all the many Irish people who've moved abroad. So, and if we were evaluating Ireland, so. First and foremost, I think let's let them impact, but not give them the brunt of the scoring. You know what I mean?
Okay, fair. That's where we are with actors and actresses.
Yeah, I think so. And,
solid.
Yeah, and I really don't think he's going to change the score that much. But let's see. That's actors, right? We had, of course, many more actors and actresses that we could recognize, but these were the big hitters. I think that are household names around the world.
Yeah.
I had a couple of other quick TV things to throw in, and I feel like I may be out on my own here because I don't think these will have connected with you quite as much as they did me.
No.
And it might have been because Ireland, and maybe the UK as well, in the 90s, just imported a load of Australian TV and shoved it in our faces. So I was exposed to the likes of, first and foremost, Bananas in Pajamas.
Love it.
Did you see that?
No, just the name of it. I love it.
It's exactly what it sounds like. It's about two bananas who are in pajamas. Their names are B1 and B2, and they are... just fantastic bananas.
Okay.
Live action, full costume. It's like Sesame Street vibes, amazing. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? B1, I think I am. B2 was their catchphrase.
Oh wow, that's phenomenal. A bit like our dynamic here.
Actually, I was going to say I would listen to a Bananas in Pajamas podcast. Separate to that though, and for a bit of an older audience, there was Home and Away and Neighbours, the power duo of Australian soap operas.
These I know.
Yeah. Now these were huge in Ireland. Like religious watching, 7 p.m. on a weekday. It was like it was Home and Away time.
Yeah,
it was massive. And Neighbours, a bit bigger, I think, in the UK, but still huge popularity abroad. Which again, getting back to the point here, it's like impact outside of the country itself,
right? Which then inspired those films, Bad Neighbours, with actually the Australian actress who I can never remember her name, and Seth Rogen. And
that may or may not be true, and I'm not going to mount a counterattack right now on this one. I'm going to let that one slide. But in any case, Neighbours, a big soap opera.
I wasn't trying to make a joke.
No, I'm sure it's broadly true. I don't have the mental wherewithal to prove you wrong right now.
Fair.
And there's one more that I definitely want to shout out, also for the listeners who may not know about it, is a one and done series called Summer Heights High.
Historic.
Amazing. Now, I don't know where you get it. I don't know where you'll find it on streaming. I don't think it's readily available. You might have to do something creative to find it. But if you've seen it, right? Or? Yeah. Chris Lilly, at the height of his powers, playing 3 different main characters in one show and nailing each and every one of them. It's, especially for an Impressions fan such as myself, this is peak Impressions.
If you saw Norbit with Eddie Murphy in 2007, 2008, this is kind of the better version.
Yeah, it's like that done well, basically. Chris Lilly knows how to play a ridiculous character but make it believable rather than ridiculous, Unbelievable.
Big Chris.
Huge shout out. And we might come back to Chris later, but in any case, that brings us to the end of film and TV. And as predicted, this was a big chunky topic. We had a lot to get through. Where are you feeling in terms of a score?
I'm thinking really good contributions here. Some successful ones also. Household names, especially in the actors, a bit in the directors. But in terms of uniqueness, I mean, they're producing some great actors, but every country, especially English-speaking countries, produce some great actors. Here we're looking at a country with quite a sizable TV and film industry. 26 million people living there. Did they do enough? I'm leaning towards a 2, which is significant in terms of uniqueness or success.
2. My God.
Keeping in mind, maybe we sum up for the listeners, Sweden rounded out to a 2.5. Mm-hmm. Japan, a 4.5, driven very much by you and your friend Kurosawa, right?
Absolutely.
And Mexico, a 2.5.
I think a 2 is too harsh here because
it might be.
You have some of the absolute biggest hitters in the world of acting, plus some of the globally most popular directors. And on top of all of that, you just have some great films, you have some great TV shows. I am leaning more towards a 4 on this one. I know it's not a 5. It's definitely not a 5. However, I'm also...
A 4?
Yeah.
I can go 3, but I can't go 4.
Highly influential on a global scale. That's what we call a 4.
Highly influential?
Yeah. Because
get rid of these films and Baz Luhrmann, and you just have some really good actors, plus Cate Blanchett, who will become the GOAT.
Massive. Heath Ledger, Hugh Jackman, Jeffrey Rush, Nicole Kidman, Russell Crowe-ish, and it's not going to swing me either way. Let's remember.
Forget Russell.
So I would be willing to settle for a 3. However, I'm also conscious that you're going for a 2, so I don't want to.
No, I can go 3.
Ooh, so we're going to agree on the 3.
Unless you play strategy and you go 4, so they end up with a 3.5.
No, I think if it comes out with a 3, it puts it ahead of Sweden and Mexico, which I think is more than fair. Yeah. And it doesn't quite bring it to Japan. And I feel Japan may have been the benefit of going first and therefore, getting some very inflated scores here on the film and TV. Maybe. But in any case, I could settle for a 3 here.
So it's 3s all around on film and TV.
Fantastic.
So let's move into our next category. Neil, what I'd like to propose for this one is cuisine.
Yeah. Let's do it.
So Aussie cuisine, huh?
Yeah.
Where to start other than Vegemite?
Where to end? I mean, well, sorry to Australians, but Vegemite is not something I've tried. I know it's a love it, hate it thing. I neither love it nor hate it because I just haven't tried it. Probably won't ever try it, to be honest.
When we're talking about, I've tried it. By the end of a stay in Australia, I actually acquired the taste, and I didn't mind having it on my toast every morning, on my burnt toast every morning.
Yeah.
It says it all, though, the fact that you haven't tried it, but you know it in terms of its pop culture significance and uniqueness.
That is true.
And that if there was a joke about Vegemite while you're watching a program from the UK or the US or Australia, you would get it.
I think that's a very good point. And I think they lead into that themselves, the company. I think their TV ads were all around love it or hate it, kind of.
Right.
So smart branding, smart advertising for sure.
And that's the thing about this category, right? It's not all about... is their cuisine as good as Mexico's or Japan's, which listeners both got a 5 out of 5 on this, right?
That's true.
But it is also about, the influence of it. It's what kept Sweden afloat to a 2 on this category because of their Swedish meatballs and gingerbread cookies.
That is true. So let's getting away from taste altogether. Influence, yes, I can recognize Vegemite for sure. I can also recognize Weetabix, as it's called in Australia.
Yeah.
Not to be confused.
Weetabix.
I've had many an argument with Australian people about this, later to discover that I was wrong. So, of course, the correct story, once and for all, is that Weet-Bix came first. It was invented in 1920, and it was only sold as Weetabix in Europe. Now, same people involved, same inventor. However, Weet-Bix did come first, so I'm not going to claim that Weetabix was the OG wheat biscuit.
Okay.
I, by the way, eat Weetabix every day of the week.
Okay.
Except for Saturday and Sunday.
When you make scrambled eggs.
Exactly.
You make sure to keep the eggs running while they're in the pan.
Walking.
Shit. It was walking, not running.
Come on.
That's why I haven't been able to replicate your recipe.
Exactly. You're trying to get them running out of the pan.
Doing it wrong.
Disaster. So my daily breakfast, Weet-Bix, I definitely have to give a huge shout out.
Yeah, Weet-Bix. That's great. Big barbecue culture. They also barbecue some local delicacies like kangaroo, crocodile, emu. I tried all of them. Fair fan, but just meat. Yeah.
You wouldn't go out of your way. And again, we're not here to rate the food. We're here to rate its impact. Exactly. Right? So cool. We love that. So, I saw a throwaway that pavlova potentially was invented in Australia, or at least is very popular.
Pavlova, the cake.
Yeah, the dessert. Yeah.
Okay.
The kind of crispy, sugary kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, with fruit in it.
All right.
Potentially, it we don't know exactly where it came from, where it started, but at least it's been a big part of Australian cuisine for a long time.
It's good, but it's no cheesecake or tiramisu.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, where that really brings us, I think, is you can already hear, listener, we're kind of scraping in the bit of the barrel here already. Because, and really my main point here is a bit like the country itself overall, it's less about inventing. They're not there, paving the way with new types of cuisine. More so, they have been a multicultural society for such a long time. There's been immigration
Absolutely.
all the way through. And what they have done is taken the cuisines of other cultures, older cultures perhaps, and refined them and mastered them, taking them to higher levels. And one of the types of cuisine that Australia is somewhat well known for is Asian fusion, for example, which is where they've just managed to combine, say, Chinese, Japanese, Thai, Indian, what have you. So that's interesting, and I think that's the most I can do here for Australia, which is to recognize how they've been able to bring on board, let's say, other types of cuisine. I haven't been there, as I say, so this is all based on just research, but apparently that is the big thing. Yeah,
and I think a big thing when we look at this, for example, when we benchmarked Japan and Mexico as fives, not just in terms of the quality of the food, but their export significance. So being in any city in the world and having for sure a place to get sushi and for sure a place to eat Mexican.
Not the case.
Do you have Australian restaurants? What is that?
There was one here that shut down, actually, which tells you a lot. Well, an Aussie barbecue joint. Yeah.
There's also an Aussie bar here, I believe.
That's more of an export, all right, but that's not. I would not say that falls into
culture.
Cuisine. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah,
I think we need to wrap this one up pretty fast. Also, in the interest of time, I'm leaning here really heavily on a 2, and even considering a 1.
So the only reason I'll give it a 2 is significant in terms of uniqueness or success in terms of the uniqueness side, and the only reason for that is probably actually the Vegemite.
That's generous. And if you're giving it for the Vegemite, I feel like I can give it for the Weetabix.
Okay.
So let's do that. Let's give it a 2.
We agree on 2s all around on cuisine. So Australia off to a 5 out of a potential 10 to start on the first 2 categories of film and cuisine. It is tied with Sweden for bottom on cuisine with a 2. Yeah. Which I think is probably to be expected.
I think so.
Where would you like to go next?
I think as well, to make some progress, we're on a roll here. Let's just bash out another category, and I think the quickest one from here is probably literature.
Your favorite, Neil.
Yeah, this is, at least for me, shameful again. Like, I'm sure, like, you can Google Australian writers, and there's hundreds and hundreds of amazing ones.
Some Booker winners, one or 2 Nobel winners. Yeah.
Amazing stuff. But remember, listener, this is the important point. This isn't fully objective, because we're reading it from our unique standpoint. And unfortunately, I can speak for myself in saying I haven't read one Australian book. Have you?
Well, you have had them read to you.
Have I?
Because Pamela Lyndon Travers wrote Mary Poppins, and she was Australian. Despite having spent most of her career in England, she was Australian.
Another one of them. Yeah.
Mary Poppins, Neil.
Yeah. Respect. Pop
culture icon.
Indeed. More to do with Julie Andrews, though, than the book. But in any case,
would there be a Julie Andrews?
There certainly wouldn't.
Without my friend here, Pamela.
She would have done some other good stuff, I'm sure.
But not Mary Poppins, not the bag with all the things.
The sound of music.
The sound of music, yes, on the plane in Spain.
Indeed. In any case, apart from Pamela Lyndon Travers' work on Mary Poppins, we have Thomas Keneally, who wrote Schindler's Ark, which I believe went on to become Schindler's List.
Which inspired the film Schindler's List and was retroactively renamed. So that significant, considering this is one of your new favorite films, since you were about 30 years late to that party.
Absolutely, but it is my favorite film, not my favorite storyline, right? So I'm saying I love the film. It's a great story, but not because of the great story. It's great because it's masterfully made, acted, directed, shot, lit, scored, all of that, right?
But the influence here.
I know. It's the influence is there. And would there be a Schindler's List without it? No, probably not. So I have to recognize that. Then again, I haven't read it, so I can't say it's impacted me all that much, right? I'm sure.
I didn't know about it till we were researching this.
There you go.
But on the other hand, bloody hell, mate!
We've got to up our game
on Australian literature.
Exactly.
The
only other one though that always comes up when there's multiple lists of the top ever books, and look who it is once again. It's The True History of the Kelly Gang, the book. Not the movie, which turned out to be the first movie ever. But the book by Peter Carey, The True History of the Kelly Gang, apparently is a really, really well-written book. And actually probably a big part of the Kelly mythos of why Kelly has gone on to become such a global phenomenon. Yeah. So I think that one I can give a bit of a shout out, and I'm determined to go and read that book. So you have my word, I will go and read that one at least.
And you'll provide a full report to our listeners on a bonus episode.
Book report, absolutely.
So Neil, that's about all we have on literature in terms of the highlights from Australia.
Shameful stuff, really. But listener, look, this is what you signed up for. This is what you get.
And Australians, win a few more Nobel Prizes. I mean,
bookers, anything.
Yeah, whatever you want. Like,
just get in there.
Put in some effort. Write a bit more, huh, guys?
Write fancy. How about that? Yeah.
So, Neil, I'm afraid that you're leaning towards something very, very low here.
Yeah, it starts with an O and ends in an E.
Is that a 1 from you? Are you locking that in?
Sorry to say, yeah.
I'm going to say it's a 2 for me because of Mary Poppins
fine.
Carrying this, which rounds us out to a 1.5 on literature from Australia.
Oof.
Not so hot at the moment for the Australians. We were very much looking forward to this episode, but up to now, out of a possible 15 points, the Australians have 6.5.
Oh, okay, but we'll just wait because it's all about to turn around.
There's
now.
some bangers coming. Huh?
Oh, there absolutely is. I think without further ado, that cues us up nicely for something positive. So I think let's get into music.
Let's do it, Neil. And I'll let you get started, as you're someone that keeps his foot jammed firmly between the door that separates us mere mortals.
Third time in our history you've used that phenomenal phrase.
And never 2 episodes in a row.
Indeed, and never gets old. It genuinely doesn't. But in any case, loads to talk about in music, I think. Starting with folk classics, first of all. Waltzing Matilda, who doesn't know that melody?
I love it. I think anybody growing up in an English-speaking background knows Waltzing Matilda.
Absolutely. One less well-known, and I might need your help on this one, is Timey Kangaroo Down Sport.
That is Timey Kangaroo Down Sport. Timey Kangaroo Down. So that's, you're out on the veranda, summer in Australia, shrimp on the barbie, and you're all singing that. It's...
Now you have just fallen into, sir, a classic trap of Australian stereotype, which is shrimp on the barbie.
Yes, okay, it wasn't shrimp, but there was a barbie.
There is a barbie, but you know as well as I, there is no shrimp on the barbie.
There is no shrimp on that barbie. I'm sorry.
But so folk tunes, there's a very strong tradition there, and gotta pour some out and respect. I should say that. Now, how about these big names in country music? Olivia Newton-John of Grease fame,
rest in peace, recently.
And Keith Urban.
Huge country singer.
So country, and remember, this is not where country music originated. So Australia has had to really join the party late and produce some absolute bangers from the country music scene.
But I think Keith Urban is probably one of the highest grossing country music recording artists ever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think he's definitely in the discussion for top 5, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
And I think just separately, Olivia Newton-John, like, come on, just for Grease alone, that's outrageous. And her performance is unreal, not just the singing, but like, I think she did a great job acting all the way through. Yeah. Questionable morals about the ending of the show Grease, but like, that's not on her, so I'm not gonna hold that against her.
Okay,
that's for another episode. Take. That's for another episode, I think. But in any case, big respect there. Another one, children's music. Now, people like to make fun of children's music as being not serious, not real music, but you cannot. And I would demand people show respect to the Wiggles in particular. The Wiggles have earned 17 gold, 12 platinum, 3 double platinum, and 10 multi-platinum awards, selling over 17 million DVDs and 4 million CDs. That is no joke, and that's a lot of money for those Wiggles.
And that's a lot of DVDs.
100%. Now, I doubt they're selling many these days, but I'm sure they're streaming away.
I'm sure they're doing just fine.
To the small hours. And again, this I think is so important to emphasize, which is that like children's media in general is such a goldmine if you can do it well.
Yeah.
Because kids have no sense of boredom with something. If they like it, they will just watch it on repeat.
Very honest viewers.
As soon as it ends, they'll go back to start and watch it. So you get such devoted listeners from it. And I think the Wiggles really cracked it. They're omnipresent.
I think you could go as far as to say they are the best group of creepy middle-aged men making music for children.
Absolutely. Which is a huge category, as we know.
Huge market.
But nobody does it better than the Wiggles.
Professionals.
Absolutely. Now, separate to the Wiggles and their work on kids' music, we have some rock and pop legends also. Now, the biggest one that comes up is AC/DC.
It's got to.
You're going to... Already, there's some listeners who just spit their coffee out all over the room hearing AC/DC.
The Scottish ones.
Exactly. Now, my understanding is they formed in Australia.
Yes. The boys immigrated, I think, when they were maybe like 10 years old or so. Yeah. The two brothers, the young brothers, to Australia.
Yeah.
So
there you go. I think that's
more... The group is Australian.
Exactly. And I think this is one where we can give them basically all of the credit of being Australian. I think.
Yeah.
Happy to be proven wrong.
But I've never, until we were researching this episode, I've never thought AC/DC, are they Scottish or are they Australian? They've always been an Aussie band for me.
Yeah.
Always.
I actually weirdly enough, never really placed them. Like, I always kind of thought, they're in that kind of same area as those other big bands,
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why I never really thought Australia specifically, but now that I know, I'm hugely impressed. You have other big names like In Excess, you have Savage Garden, Kylie Minogue, and Danny Minogue to a lesser extent, but Kylie Minogue is huge, no?
Yeah, still is to this day.
Like, shocking longevity of her career, putting out bangers. She had one as recently as a few months ago, I
Still
think.
touring, yeah.
Absolutely. So
Savage Garden, though, massive shout out. I mean, that early turn of the century love pop.
Yeah.
You remember it?
Kind of. I'm just kind of making sure
Truly,
I'm
madly, deeply. The song.
Yeah.
I wanna stand with you
beautiful.
on a mountain.
It's good you sang it because I wouldn't have copped it otherwise. Yeah, they're huge. Their discography is only sadly 2 albums, but massive.
Solid gold.
They were actually named as one of the Q150 celebrations as one of the most influential artists of Queensland in their history.
Yeah.
And they were number 28 in Rolling Stone's 50 greatest Australian artists of all time. Massive.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
And of course, it would not be a discussion of Australian music without mentioning The Men at Work.
If we could play it, we would play it for you right now.
If we weren't under copyright restrictions, we would be blaring it. Maybe, listener, you can go blare it in the background as you listen to this episode. But yeah, Land Down Under is a banger.
And that's not the only one. They are not a one-hit wonder, remember? Who Can It Be Now? I mean, there's a whole catalogue there.
We talked about that, in the One Hit Wonders episode. Yeah, true. And separate to Men at Work, by the way, one more.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, sorry, two big ones. Tame Impala and Sia, who I think they're a bit modern. Maybe not your wheelhouse, Sia or Tame Impala.
Yeah, one of the best voices of this day and age, I would say.
Amazing.
The Cate Blanchett of Australian singers. How about that?
Absolutely huge. Now, one more. Beegees. I know what you're thinking. Are they Australian? So this is another one where...
Yeah, I'm confused now.
Apparently, when you do the Googling, as we have been doing...
Yeah.
You have to kind of double check where exactly these lads are from. They apparently spent some time in Australia, or they formed initially there. It's all a little bit unclear.
That's the key. I think the Gibbs are originally from the Isle of Man, so we're going to have a few angry listeners there of our huge community of LIPers in the Isle of Man if we give this to the Aussies.
100%.
But I believe that they formed the group before immigrating to Australia.
So, to confirm, they formed the group The Rattlesnakes in 1955 in Chorlton, Manchester.
And then realized that with that name, they couldn't go anywhere.
That was doomed from the start, let's be real. They then moved to Redcliffe in the Moreton Bay region of Queensland, and later to Crib Island. And then they became the Beegees, and then they returned to the UK. So, okay, it's a stretch to say that they are an Australian group, but, Australia was a crucial part of their story, Yeah. I'm not going to say they're Australian, but at least, I
always thought they were from Massachusetts because they have a song called Massachusetts.
There you go.
Yeah.
How easily fooled we often are with these musicians.
Unreal. Do we include them or not, Beegees?
Let's just say like
a sprinkle.
Bonus fact.
All right.
So I think that covers music to a decent extent.
Well-rounded, I'd say, in terms of music. What are you leaning towards as a score here?
It's tricky, isn't it?
Considering the music goat at the moment is Sweden with a 5.
Yeah. And that was ABBA, highly influenced by ABBA.
But also all their production work and then all the DJs, etc.
No, it's not even... I know, I was very positive here, but it's just not even... I don't know if it's even a 4, this one.
Or Aussies, yeah.
I would love to end up this one on like a 3.5. So for that reason... Because I know we don't do half scores, but I do think on a good day I could see it as a 4, this one.
So highly influential on a global scale. You give it a 4.
Yeah, because Mexico got a 3, and we had mariachi, and we had... That was kind of it, right? On Mexico.
Okay, look, I think if we look at the success across genres, because if I include the Wiggles, Keith Urban, Olivia Newton-John on the countryside, AC/DC on rock and pop, I will... What is so a close. 3? A 3 is somewhat significant in terms of uniqueness and success. How did Mexico end up with a 3 on this category?
I think mariachi got a huge...
Mariachi?
Yeah.
Oh, Carlos Santana had a big push. If Carlos Santana has that much influence, AC/DC has to have even more.
100%. I think
that's a 4.
That's a 4.
Lock 4 on music. Australia staging attempting to stage a comeback here.
Well, they haven't got a 5 so far, and I don't know if they will, but in any case...
11.5 out of 20 so far, a passing grade in Ireland.
Indeed. Well above 40%, which is a passing grade.
Average.
100%, and I think that takes us nicely into the final official category for today.
Yes.
Which is sport.
Sport. I think, right off the bat, I'm going to go out there and say it, one of the most iconic sporting countries on Earth.
I see it. Maybe we've saved the best to last, actually.
I think so. Yeah. 14th all-time at Olympic Games with 566 medals, 170 gold, considering that the vast majority of those are Summer Olympics. They're basically not participating seriously at the Winter Olympics.
How could they, yeah.
That's huge. And then they compete on a high level and win at so many sports.
That's true.
Cricket, arguably the most boring sport in the world, but they're one of the best at it.
Why not? Leave them to it. Yeah.
Consistently beating the English at the Ashes.
100%.
That you and I watch together
religiously.
Now, football-wise, they're not great, but they've been on the upturn. The Socceroos, they call them.
That is a little gap in the armor, all right. Yeah. It's because they are world-class on so many things, but soccer, just a little bit weak there. Yeah.
But they make up for it by having been consistently world champions both in rugby league and rugby union, men and women.
100%. That has been painful. Also, as an Irish rugby fan, in the last, say, 30 years, but since I knew what rugby was, Australia have been a little bit of a thorn in our side. They just outperform, especially on the world stage, especially in World Cups. They do so much better. All of the Southern Hemisphere teams do, but especially, versus, say, Ireland, we look on in envy at the rugby mastery. Now, things have swung a little bit in our way since then, and maybe we're on the comeback, but I have to give a big shout out to Australian rugby. It's been huge. Yeah.
And rugby in general as a culture, it wasn't until I went to Australia that I appreciated it. So I always grew up with football, European soccer, let's say, and American football because I was in the US, and we never gave 2 cents about rugby, right? But the culture is great. And what they say, the classic phrase also from Invictus with the South Africans, a hooligan's game played by gentlemen. It is very true in terms 100%. Of sportsmanlike conduct and everything. So I really appreciate rugby. Also league, actually, because of its higher pace, it was easier to get into in the beginning for me than union.
Also, as a spectator, I think it's just that little bit more easy to make sense of. Rugby union, if you watch it with someone who's never seen it before, you'll find yourself talking 90% of the time. Yeah. Just being like, okay, so that was basically a turnover, so they're going to go back to the 22, and then they'll do a drop. And it's just like, okay, excuse me, what? Like, it's so confusing.
Exactly.
But that's neither here nor there. They didn't invent rugby, but at least they're massive in it.
Excelling at it.
What they did invent...
Yes.
Aussie rules.
The biggest spectator sport and the sport that has the most money in it in Australia. The AFL.
100%.
Men's and women's.
Now, interesting, a bit like the GAA in Ireland, not to make everything about Ireland, but it's one of those sports that is huge in the country but doesn't quite get the audience abroad versus, say, like NBA or NFL or one of those things, right? The AFL really does stay within Australian
localized
borders, more or less, with the small exception of compromise rules where sometimes Ireland and Australia will play each other in a mixed sport, which is like a mix of Aussie rules and Gaelic football. Okay. So that's cool. I like that. That's more of a novelty.
How close do Gaelic and Aussie rules get?
Actually, it's I would say similar, only in the outfield kind of play, and the scoring is so different.
Okay,
AFL is AFL is these like 3 different posts and all these things, whereas Gaelic football is just a goal with some sticks on the top of it, and you can kick it over the bar or into the goal. But in any case, it is similar, and I'm sure there's some. If you look into the development of Aussie rules, it's probably. Yeah,
heavily inspired by Gaelic.
From Gaelic football, But in any case, massive and a cool, always great to see a country own its sport and say, this is our sport and nobody else plays it like we do. So I like that.
And they sell out every weekend, every match day, stadiums from 50,000 to 100,000 of capacity for this.
Respect.
In a country with also, by the way, that does the same thing for cricket and 2 different versions of rugby.
They love the sport though, 100%.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting. And also, let's come back to the per capita index on this, because like all the things we've mentioned, let's not forget the population is not like that high.
27 million. Like for such a large country in terms of landmass. I mean, of the countries we've done, the only one that's smaller than it is Sweden.
Exactly.
But Japan and Mexico both have 100 million more people than Australia does.
Exactly. So on sport and in general, I think we're going to find that Australia will punch above its weight on the per capita index,
definitely,
even if we've also been a little bit, let's say, low on some of the others,
right?
But we had a few more here. We had Olympics. We just mentioned at the start with the Olympic medals. But yes, swimming, 212 Olympic medals.
Yeah, and you remember when we were young, the Torpedo, Ian Thorpe.
Oh, Thorpe, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
The name rings a bell. When I saw Torpedo written down, I was like, wait, what? But no, fair. Mr. Thorpe. Yeah. Emma McKeown and Dawn Fraser.
Yeah, great female swimmers. So on that level, both, I think, with at least 8 Olympic medals. So 212 Olympic medals just in swimming.
So jealous. This is another one where I wish Ireland had gotten our act together. Yeah.
And swimming actually is a sport you can develop in any country if you have the infrastructure of swimming pools.
Yeah, exactly.
And oceans, which Ireland, you are surrounded by a sea. You are an island.
You would think. There you go.
But there you go. And then tennis, actually, now at the time of release of this episode, it's about 2 weeks ago, Novak Djokovic was playing in the final of Wimbledon, which he lost to Carlos Alcaraz. Had he won, he would have matched Margaret Court's record for all-time Grand Slam titles.
Nice that she gets to hold on to it.
She's Australian.
There you go. Margaret Court. I love when an athlete has a name that's relevant to the sport they play as well.
Beautiful, right?
Love it.
And she didn't even have to change it.
Just amazing.
So Margaret Court, by the numbers, best tennis player ever.
Got out. And Leighton Hewitt as well.
Leighton Hewitt, Rocket Rod Laver before him.
Yeah.
They host the Australian Open every year, which might be the most fun Grand Slam, although it's hot. And then, so they are, with 166 Grand Slam titles, they're second to only the US.
Yeah, this is big, actually. I think I'm seeing a strength come through here, actually, for Australia. We had some lows all the way up to now, but I do think sport really does come through quite
big
strong.
Sporting country.
100%.
And they do it nicely. So, big sporting country. Anything else to add on sport?
Well, just one. And it seems like this is often my little motorsport corner that I sometimes force into every episode I can.
You got it.
Motorsports. Danny Ricciardo, as of the last few weeks, is back in Formula One with a seat at AlphaTauri. Nick De Vries having been punted unceremoniously out of the AlphaTauri team. So welcome back, Danny. Rick. And Oscar Piastri, also Australian, is having an unbelievable rookie season so far in Formula One.
Nicely done, Oscar. And you know what both of these lads have in common?
Great banter.
Danny Ricciardo, Oscar Piastri, Italo Aussies.
Ouch. Yeah, I can see why you wouldn't be able to resist getting that in. That is true. Yeah. That is true.
Big Italian diaspora, actually, in Australia. Also big Balkan one, etc.
Irish also.
Yeah,
that's
Irish. Yeah.
But no, true. So both of those Italian-Australian legends now paving the way through Formula One once again. Great to see Danny Rick back. A charisma machine.
Absolutely.
Just a lovable guy. So that really helps as well with my scoring here, because I think everywhere you look, there's an Australian killing it in sports.
Absolutely. We've even had them in the NBA. I remember with Andrew Bogut, etc. They medaled, I think, even at an Olympics. So look, a 5. When we give that out, it means we cannot imagine a world without that country's contributions to that category. I, Neil, cannot imagine a world without Australia's contributions to sport.
This is huge, because if we give it a 5, this will be our highest ever scoring sport country so far.
That becomes the benchmark. I think we've been very generous with Mexico's 4. Mm-hmm. I've gotten some fan mail about that. Japan got a 4, not so much because of success, but because of the influence. Debatable. Sweden had a 3. I don't remember why.
There was only we had some big names, but their impact on the world stage wasn't so huge. I think we got to lock in a 5 here. Also, we haven't given them a 5 yet, so this is huge.
Yeah, but that can't be the reason. The reason is, they're a huge sporting country.
They are, and I'm wanting to be even-handed in the ratings here. So I think when it's a 5, it's a 5, and this is a 5.
5s all around. So we've wrapped up the 5 official categories before we get to the wild card. Mm-hmm. And out of 25 points, we are now at 16.5.
Well, it's not all over just yet, because to reach the grand heights of second place, all they need is a 5.
Yeah, that's true, because let's remember that Mexico and Sweden tied for second at 19.5. So they cannot beat Mexico, the Aussies, on the wild card, but they can come second.
Am I right in saying
Sorry,
that?
they cannot beat Japan.
That's true.
With a 22.5.
Wow.
That's my La La Land Moonlight Oscars moment there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. But that means we have to jump into our wild card, right?
Yeah, and we both have a proposal, and then we can choose one.
Maybe I'll score mine, you score yours, or something like that. Right. And mine is pretty quick. It's just that it's something that comes up a lot with us when we talk about Australia, and something I mentioned right at the start was the banter.
Oh,
the laughs, the lols.
some of the funniest people on
Some
earth.
of the most naturally funny people on earth. And I think if either of us had to say what's the funniest podcast out there currently, of course it's Hamish and Andy, without a question.
Our colleagues.
Literally a dangerous podcast to listen to in the gym, because you could at any moment laugh and drop the weights on your head. Like, it is that dangerous.
I've done it on my toes.
It's so genuinely, I have to really concentrate when I'm doing a bench press or something, because it's that dangerous.
Yeah.
But apart from those who are broadcasters, comedians and broadcasters, right? But you have some great classic comedians as well. So Jim Jeffries, Hannah Gatsby, Rebel Wilson, the actor who's
she's great,
has a background in comedy, Chris Lilly, who we mentioned from Summer Heights High, Adam Hills. We have Sammy J and Randy, who I had the pleasure of seeing once in Edinburgh. Amazing duo of a standard comedian plus a puppet called Randy, and just an amazing duo. But then the person I really wanted to give a shout out to here, who doesn't get enough respect, I think, in 2023, is Tim Minchin. Do you know Tim Minchin?
Yes, I know Tim Minchin.
Like a musical genius, comedic legend. When he pulls it together, as he used to, less so these days, but as he used to, he's untouchable in the musical comedy genre, I would say. These days, he's busy writing real musicals. He wrote the Matilda musical and won a bunch of awards for it. So you don't see him doing his old shtick so much anymore, but legend of the game. So for that reason, I absolutely had to give a huge shout out to Australian comedy. And with all those names put to the side, just the vibe. Like, when's the last time you met an Australian person where you came away thinking, oh, they were a bit dry, weren't they? Like, they were a bit dull. You'll never have that. They're always a bit of fun. They'll always be up for
a bit of raunchy when it needs to be,
a bit of banter, irreverent, just kind of happy to make fun of themselves as well as other people.
Absolutely.
They give as good as they get. So I think on this one, I have to give a really nice 5.
Wow. Okay.
That's how I would give my wild card. Let's see how this works, because we haven't done split wild cards.
A 5 before. For your wild card. Now here's my wild card: nature and wildlife. So I think in terms of significance and uniqueness, from a pop culture perspective, you look at their animals. Where else do you get the kangaroo, the wallaby, the emu? That is shades
true.
Of the crocodile.
That is true.
And even if you've never been to Australia, and especially as a kid, you admire these animals and you know exactly where to place them on the map.
That's true. They are iconic, actually.
Yeah.
And for many people, in fact, synonymous with Australia.
Yeah.
Where you think Australia, kangaroo, straight away, koala, wallaby, all these things.
And you remember Steve Irwin, rest in peace, crocodile hunter. I remember Crocodile Dundee, also in New York, right?
Exactly.
Then we've seen also Kangaroo Jack, horrible movie from maybe 0203, but
still.
Why did I go to the cinema? Because there was a kangaroo with sunglasses and a hoodie on.
His name was Jack.
His name was Jack. Of course it was. Timey Kangaroo Down Sport.
We need to look that one up, actually.
You've got to listen to
a strange gap in my knowledge. But yeah, I actually see your point there from a wildlife perspective in particular, from animals.
And the nature, so not just the wildlife, but the nature, arguably the best nature adventure trip you can have on Earth, also in terms of the diversity of that continent. Okay. So it's a 5 for me on my wild card.
Wow.
What a comeback from the Aussies.
Oh dear, yeah, because that'll bring them right up to
21.5. All of a sudden, Australia finds itself on the podium contending for a silver medal, only 1 point away from the Japanese with 22.5.
That's outrageous. What a comeback. Because we were right down in the gutter there in the start, in the opening
Big
rounds.
Time. Yeah. And it started with a mild 3 on film. A 2 on cuisine, a 1.5 on literature. It was going everything in the wrong direction, and then they clawed it back with a 4 on music, a 5 on sport, making it the GOAT sport country at the moment in our pop culture country tier list, and then rounding out with a 5 on the wild card.
I think that's fair though, because for some reason the categories that we follow, music, film and TV, literature, cuisine, sport, they don't do Australia justice really, Right. And it wouldn't be fair, I think, to walk away without having dropped in a wild card that we did.
Absolutely.
So I think we've done them justice here.
Australia, second on the podium.
Congratulations.
In the pantheon.
And I would guess probably second in the per capita index as well.
Yes.
We haven't done the math on that, but I would guess they're not quite Sweden level, but they are definitely ahead of Japan and ahead of Mexico.
Exactly. So, how do you feel?
Delighted, actually. The only regret I think I have, thinking back now on the hour, is we didn't give enough respect to Steve Irwin. I think
Let's do that now.
Well, you can say a lot about his style and how he was, and it's not for everyone, let's say. personally, I think he's amazing. I just love his ridiculous over-the-top energy, his enthusiasm. And for me, when he was alive, he was just like one of those absolutely lovable figures and representations of Australia. And I think it's just really sad that he died so young and so unfortunately in such a freak accident, doing admittedly his job and what he was known for and what he loved. But like, he had a lot more, I think, to give.
Definitely.
You know?
I mean, he's been dead, I think... He must have died not 20 years ago, but 15 or so now.
Yeah, it feels very recent still. And I know his son is still up to some good stuff.
Following in his footsteps.
Yeah, but I just think you'll never truly get another Steve Irwin. He was kind of one in a million.
Revered, loved, appreciated the world over.
Exactly. So I think it was a shame that somehow he came up a bit in film and TV, but he almost needs his own section, Steve. So I think just a big, huge shout out to Steve Irwin for being someone who probably for a lot of people was something that ignited their interest in wildlife and animals or nature or what have you. So I think just a huge character and a great figure to wrap up this episode on, perhaps.
Absolutely. And you can visit the Australia Zoo in Queensland. I had an emotional moment when I did. It's his zoo. Yeah.
That was his kind of home there.
The house that Steve built. Yeah. It's definitely
someday
definitely
when I get down to that part of the world,
down under,
I'll make it part of the trip.
Yes,
for sure. And look at that, we got through an hour without doing too much offensive Australian stereotypes.
Exactly, and we'll dedicate this episode actually to Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter himself.
100%. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, listeners, and we'll hear you on the next one.